Navigating the road to success in the entertainment industry can be daunting, but we're here to help keep you centered. Undetoured, navigating the artist's journey. My next guest, Clifton Guterman, is a casting director, producer, teacher, and active member of the Atlanta performing arts community since 2001. Presently, Clifton is the head of the TV and film division of Big Picture Casting. When he's not casting, he's an active member of the advisory committee for the Georgia High School Musical Theater Awards, the chair for the Artist Advisory Council of Arts ATL, and a member of Arts Leaders of Metro Atlanta's class of 2020. Clifton has cast over 100 productions for Atlanta's theater scene, including at the Tony Award-winning Alliance Theater, where he's also had the chance to direct the Candida Festival, along with the Atlanta Opera, where he's directed, and Theatrical Outfit. Let's just say he keeps busy. Let's drop in on our conversation that we had in December of 2021. I'm so grateful that all of you have been able to slow down and join us back here at Base Camp in my Fortress of Geektitude here. And today I am extremely fortunate to have been able to get hold of my friend for a small amount of time because he is extremely busy. But when people often describe being of service to others as being one of the greatest gifts that they could give themselves, this next guest is a true testament to that. Having cast over 100 productions in Atlanta, Georgia, and serving on several committees that have given back to the community in various ways, my next guest is now serving as the head of TV and film for casting for Big Picture Casting. Please welcome my friend, Clifton Guterman-Gough.
Thank you so much, Sloan. That was quite an intro. I'm thrilled to be here with you. You are one of my oldest, I guess, but just long-term contacts in Atlanta performing arts, going way back. And you've always been a touch point of joy, and we've intersected in many ways. So it's a thrill to be here. I'm honored to be asked.
Oh gosh, me too. And you know, going back, if I think about it, our first touch point would be Bat Boy the musical.
Yeah, you were our stage manager at Dad's Garage.
Yeah,
which we got to do at the Alliance for a couple of weeks on the Hurt stage as part of their city series.
Yeah, and I just remember that being one of my absolute favorite productions I ever stage managed in my 10-year career of stage managing, because I have iterated just like you. We tend to be creative people that iterate and kind of redevelop ourselves in vast ways, you know, like we're all expansiveness, right? Like every single one of us is expansiveness of, especially if you get to be a storyteller, you get to be extremely expansive in what you get to do. And so one of the times that I was in a life previous was doing stage management, and Clifton, you were amazing in that lead role. I mean, it just gave me chill bumps every night.
Thank you. What was so great about that is that it was a big undertaking for Dad's Garage to do something so big and then also take it to the Alliance, and so
that was their first
cast,
time.
Huge. And but what it needed was great leadership, and that was Sean was still here, and Sean Danish directed it, but as always, the stage manager is the mother hen or the father hen or whoever. And that is you in sort of a nutshell. Just you're so caring and take care of everybody and so organized. And so it was quite a big undertaking with a lot of people, a lot of props, a lot of blood, a lot of, a couple different venues. And we were so safe and taken care of because you were in charge. So it was just fantastic. That is going to always be one of my top career memories, when with my actor hat on.
Yeah. And you were a fantastic actor. You're hilarious. But I love that you have settled into this amazingly versatile lifestyle, that you've been able to create a lot of different versions of yourself. And we talk about this a lot on Undetoured, because I feel like in life, we feel that if we're not doing that very first thing we set out to do, like being an actor or whatever it is, we're a failure. And I want you to speak to that a little bit, from like when you were a child, having that either supportive, or maybe you weren't supported, I don't know, but just to speak to kind of that first version of yourself and kind of how that translated and been able to get you to where you are today?
Sure, I'm happy to. I tell the story a lot, story, but this part of me, it really has shaped who I am. But I grew up in a tiny pocket of Southwest Georgia, in a tiny little town, population 300, on a dirt road that they didn't pave until I was in the 8th grade, in the middle of the country, surrounded by farmers and cows and peanuts and soybeans. We weren't farmers, but I was a country boy. And, I was surrounded by a bunch of male cousins and uncles and father, and they were all hunters and fishers and sportsmen. And I very early on was not, and I was very creative, and I was very imaginative, and I was very much into playing and pretend and crafts and sewing with my grandmother. I just was not odd, but I just was, the grandkid who wasn't like the others. And so I quickly found the arts, and I had a great family that let me and supported me and took me to those rehearsals and let me just try everything I wanted: piano and voice and community theater and church theater and handbell choir and all those things. And I'm very blessed that they saw that in me really early on, and they knew that, like, I was terrified of guns. I didn't want to hold one. I didn't want to kill an animal. I did like to fish, I'll say that. And I did like to, build tree houses and climb. I was very boyish in a lot of ways, but I was not like a lot of other kids down there. And I have to say, and there was some drama at home and some trauma over my life and my family. And I really found that the arts saved me growing up. And I was dealing, as I grew, with sexuality questions, and I'm supposed to like girls, all my friends like girls, my mom, my guy friends have girlfriends, and I think that I'm supposed to do that. And I tried it. I failed miserably. And then now I'm in the middle of the Bible Belt, and I have the church telling me I need to be saved, and I need, and this is a sin and this is a sin. And so I had a lot of conflicting narratives, but the one narrative that was always so strong was the power of storytelling and the arts, and how I could go to a rehearsal or, learn a part or be in a cast and escape all that stuff that was in my head and whatever may be going on at home, and really be somebody else for a little while. And I really think it saved me that I got to play in these other worlds, and I got to just be myself and around like-minded people who loved me just the way I was. And it has continued to be the arts. I've been very lucky, Sloan, from like leaving that, I left at 18 and went off for an undergrad degree in drama, and then later an MFA in performing arts and acting. And I have only worked in the industry since leaving my tiny little town, and in many hats, but I've never not had to. And I know I'm very lucky. But because of that, it has saved my life over and over and over again, what we do. And so I will be forever grateful that the arts found me and I found the arts, because it truly saved my life.
So, when you were at home in this small town with, all these hunters around you and your parents, and you said there was a little bit of trauma, is that because there was a denial of who your true self was at the time by them? Or,
No, it wasn't my trauma really. It was there were some addiction issues in my family and some mental health issues and some just a lot of chaos at home. And so I really spent a lot of my time um, purposefully signing up for everything. Like I would just go and do everything to get away from it all. And my parents were wonderful, and they've been really wonderful to me. But I saw a lot, and it was hard. But I I think I went in the direction of like, I'm going to get away from it as much as I can and pour myself into these things I love, um, to distract myself. So and I will say, like, I didn't really I was very lucky. I certainly have friends, and I went to school with friends, other LGBTQ friends who were from the South, who grew up in tiny towns, who really had a rough time with that part of their life, and who were either really bullied or really rejected or sent to replace, reparative therapy, or sent to homes. I had a friend in college who really had it really really rough. I didn't, but I also grew up in that little town, which was next to another town where we went to school, doctor and stuff. I grew up in I guess what you would, for lack of a better word, like middle class, sort of popular kid, in the sense that like my parents and my friends' parents had all gone to school together too, and they were all friends, and they stayed in their same zip code. To quote a Dixie Chicks song, they didn't leave their zip code. And so I kind of inherited a network of support. And my mom was a really beloved teacher in the school system there. And so it's not that I didn't get called sissy now and then, or picked on a little, but I was in the group of popular kids, and all my friends were all the popular girls. Like they were all of like the girl. So nobody sort of would touch me in the sense of like, because I was with them. So I kind of skated by, and I had, on the surface, I had a girlfriend, or I had a prom date or a homecoming date. My best friend actually from kindergarten through now, my best female friend, we were always each other's default date. We would go to everything together. It was just assumed. We would literally go to like the homecoming dance, take the pictures for our parents, and then get in the car and go to a movie. We wouldn't stay. Did it for prom too. And later we go to college together at UGA, and she comes out as lesbian, and we're both now happily out. But we just found each other. But our moms were best friends in high school. That's how tight this little place is. So in a weird way, I lucked up because of kind of who I was the community I was born into. So I really count my lucky stars that I didn't get picked on a lot. And I didn't struggle a lot growing up with that. We were religious, but we weren't Bible thumping. We were Methodist. And so I never heard at home like the fire and brimstone stuff, or I kind of always knew in the back of my head, if and when I say this out loud and admit it and talk to them, they're not going to pull the Jesus card on me. That's just not going to be my family. And they didn't.
And when did that happen for you? What was that like?
It was just as I was graduating college, actually.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, 22. I was out in college at UGA, and I had boyfriends, and and I had relationships, and I had a couple of cousins from home who were at UGA with me too, and they certainly knew. I just hadn't had the conversation with my parents yet, and I hadn't, there was no social media at the time, so nobody really knew but my friends at college. So it was a bad break. Actually, I was dating someone, my first ever full relationship, crashed and burned when I was around 22, and it hit me harder than I ever thought it would, and I didn't see it coming, and it was very, very hard on me. And it happened to fall around Easter one year when I was going home to be with my family, and they could tell instantly that something was wrong and that I wasn't myself, and they kind of coaxed it out of me. And they were like, particularly my very observant grandmother, who's now gone, but I'm named for her. Her name is Clifford, and she grew up right next to me, like a stone's throw across the yard. And she's kind of my other mom. She half raised me. She knew before anyone that something was wrong. And they all kind of pulled it out of me, and then I just sat them all down and told them. Yeah. So I was kind of a late bloomer in the sense of saying it out loud to the people I love, but I was acting on it, and very sure of who I was at around 20, 21.
And what that energy does to you to just let that weight go.
Hmm.
Who you
Oh,
became right after that. I'm just so curious because then now it's out, you're feeling like your truest version of your authentic self, which is what you as a casting director want everyone to just be in an audition, right?
yeah,
So to
absolutely.
find that within yourself at a pretty later on, trying to manage all of that. So what happens after that for you? What do you
Yeah, I don't think people who haven't had that kind of coming out experience realize what kind of trauma, what kind of level of just anxiety you carry around with you on a daily basis if you're hiding something, or that you're afraid somebody's going to find out something, or in the back of your head you think there's still some shame attached, or you don't. It's just it is utterly freeing, and it does feel like a massive boulder that was sitting on your chest just gets lifted. And it doesn't mean that it all, certainly. And I came of age and out in 98. And that was obviously a very different place than where we are now for equality. And it was at the crest of the AIDS epidemic. I remember in college, um, uh, going to the college health department and getting tested now and then. And those were the days that you had to wait 2 weeks and you had to call in. And like, I remember, it was, if no one's been through that, and friends, I didn't have any later, I knew some friends that were HIV positive, but you see people nationally or dying, and you're sitting there having that test, and you think you've been good, and you think you've been responsible, and then you have to wait 2 weeks. That's a lot for a
It's a
young person.
lot. I did one as well right around that time.
Yeah. So I
Luckily,
don't
I
know
was
where.
not, but I mean, that's a lot
Yeah.
on. I mean, what goes through your mind, right? Like, because
Yeah.
you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so young and I have my whole life ahead of
I
me.
know.
And,
But these days I see, and I know some family members who have young people coming out at their teens or tweens. And and obviously TikTok and all these, you just see it's fascinating to me. And I do daydream sometimes, and I'm like, wow, what if I could have come out at 12? And what a gift that now, like, there's so many resources. It's not that some of the bad is all gone away. I mean, there's still there's still discrimination out there. Obviously, we still don't have full equality. We still don't. Like, some states still don't have hate crime legislation. We're not all the way there, but I'm just so amazed at how young people today have so many resources and can figure out that part of themselves earlier on. And like, I do sometimes think like, oh, who would I have been if I could have been really myself at like 12? Yeah.
yeah, because that's such a formidable age, like 12, 13. My sons are
Mm-hmm.
13 now. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of their friends that we knew early on, and they're
Mm-hmm.
transitioning into their truest version of their self. And I love it. It's wonderful. It's like, oh, and they're so supportive, because they're like, I love that they're growing up in that world now, that they're like, oh, yeah, they're transitioning. It's fine, and how wonderful it would have been for us to have that support system back then for everyone, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
older than
I.
you, but I mean, I talked about this in other podcasts. I struggled, when I was younger. I had feelings for girls,
Mm-hmm.
and I acted on them, and but then I was made to feel shameful for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized, like, I'm more of like love everyone. I just love the
Mm-hmm.
soul of someone.
Yeah.
What didn't
Sure.
matter, for me at the time. I didn't know that that was called pansexual or whatever. Back
Yeah.
then, there wasn't a term for it, but yeah. So now, when you are just going forward and you find Atlanta, which is
Mm-hmm.
for you this bigger city of hopes and dreams, so so to speak. Tell me a little bit about what those first steps were into the entertainment community and what you first got to kind of experience here, obviously being an actor.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really have had a really fortunate path, but it also has meant I put myself in that path, and I've been very ambitious, and I've always gone after what I wanted. And then when I, got the opportunities, tried to show up 150%. That's sort of been
So
my
true.
journey.
Yes.
Yeah, if you get the opportunity, you got to make yourself, indispensable. So I went to grad school at SCAD, and we had to choose a field internship, and we had to go out and find it. And my last year, and I was starting to get interested in casting, and I reached out to Jody Feldman at the Alliance, who is multi-decade casting director and producer, is now part of her title, and just to ask if I could do a summer internship right after I finished school. And I did, and it turned into a 4-season job. So I assisted her one summer, and it happened to be the summer at the Alliance when Kenny Leon was on his way out as artistic director, and Susan Booth was on her way in, and Kenny left and his assistant left with him. And after spending a great summer with Jody doing generals and doing a lot of auditions, it became clear that the department needed an assistant, and Susan needed an assistant, and I was right there, and it just happened. And so suddenly I then have a 4-year job as the assistant to the new artistic director, the long-term casting director, associate AD, the literary department. And I spent my first 4 years out of college being immersed in a major regional theater's day-to-day artistic activity. And it was like another education. And then at night acting, or a couple of Alliance shows even, and they let me do that too. So it was, I kind of like just dove right in after college into like a really busy Atlanta theater community. And then I was acting around town at night, including the show you and I did together, while keeping that day job. And it just sort of evolved from there. We all know Rachel May, the founder of Synchronicity Theater, and for the longest time, Rachel was doing all of the casting at Actors Express, and I assisted her a couple of times when she needed some help, because I was doing that by day at the Alliance. And when Rachel got very busy and decided to put all of her effort into Synchronicity, she sort of handed off casting at Actors Express to me. So it sort of was just about who I was next to at what time, and then how they trusted me to take the reins and move on from there. So
But it all goes back to being in service. Like you were,
yeah.
like you said, making yourself, extremely effective as a partnership so that people felt that they could rely on you. And,
Mm-hmm.
you put the work in, you did your dues. And
Yeah.
so then going forward from there, after that, what was the next?
Yeah. So all that time at the Alliance, I was doing all of this acting around town, including the show with you and Sean. And that actually is what I had in the back of my head, thoughts of moving to New York. I was like, I'm in my 20s now. If I'm ever going to do it, should I? And interestingly enough, Sean, Daniels, who was the founder of Dad's Garage, ends up out at Cal Shakes, which is in the Berkeley area, as associate AD. And he is working on a big, massive um, production of The Life and Times of Nicholas Nickleby, the 8-hour epic. It was going to take up 2 slots in their summer season. And he and the artistic director, Jonathan Moscone, were casting, and they were looking for one of the principal roles, and they offered it to me. And I went out to California for a whole summer, which then turned into another show that I got while I was out there. And that I left the Alliance to go be an actor full time. I went to Equity. I went out to California, and that was my stepping stone to New York. And because of the work I did out in California, I ended up with a New York agent, Equity card, and then just moved to New York with those 2 very crucial things in my pocket, and did that for 3 years. And I really was. I was based in New York, and I was out of New York about 80% of the time doing regional theater, which was fantastic. I was all over the country at really great places, but based in New York. So I'd finish a show and go back to New York for a little while and audition more and book something, go out. And it was at the time of my life. It was wonderful. And that's when I met my husband.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so like, was there someone that balanced all of that?
Not at the time. I was living the single actor life and actor housing and loving it, but always a little lonely. And I had always been, I was always the kind of person who wanted a person and to be with someone and to be with them, you know, forever and only them. And I was very, you know, that was just sort of how I was wired. And so, yeah, it was getting a little lonely and tiring, and I wanted to be, you know, and I eventually joined, this was before apps, but I joined one of the dating sites like Match.com, and we joke because Chad was on it like 3 years and I was on it like 3 months, and we met, and the rest is history. I had been on some not so great Match.com dates, and I was getting discouraged, and dating in New York is really challenging. You know, sites or not, but just meeting people in New York at bars or parties, or it was very, very disheartening and discouraging. And so when I met him, it was
it
just,
because you, sorry to interrupt you, but was it
no,
because you felt there was some inauthenticity? Because Chad is so authentic. Like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
I
know
mean,
him that well, but I just
he
sense
is. Oh, he's what he seems to be, which is wonderful. No, I found in New York that there's just such an edge and anxiety in the air to New York over everything. But then you start going out to bars and meeting people, and I was astonished that like those conversations went like this. You would see somebody, there would be some sort of mutual attraction. You try to start up a conversation, and in New York, it always went, "What do you do? What do you do?" And then you would say, "Well, I'm an actor." "Oh, have I seen you on Broadway? What have I seen you in?" And he would say, "Well, no, I don't know. If you've been seeing regional theater for the last 4 years, you might have seen me. So no New York theater." No. And then it was just sort of a sizing up of like, it was very upsetting, and just sort of like, can't we just talk about like where we come from, or like, what do you like? What do I like? What are your hobby? It was always just sort of like a job interview almost, or it was very, just upsetting.
Yeah,
And yeah,
it's funny that you should say that because I've talked about this with other guests about the self-worth being in what have you just done or what are you about
yeah,
to do. And it is so hard for artists to be living in that light of dimmed if you are, you know, not doing
mhm,
anything right now because there's a dip, or bright because you just did something but then it's going to be dim again and like, you know, and
yeah.
just to have that on us like all the time. That was like one of
Yeah,
the
it's like
reasons why I wanted to start
it's
this.
product oriented, or the end result oriented, and it's just it's not healthy. And I, you know, I would, in my mind, I would be saying to those guys or to myself, well, I'm pretty proud that I have only worked in the industry since I graduated. I'm pretty proud that I've never, nothing wrong with being a barista or a waiter, but I've been able to have jobs and act. And I, you know, I'm happy that I've been doing regional theater for 4 years. I don't have a credit that you might recognize, but I'm riding pretty high and feel pretty good about my choices. But it was just, you know, it was crazy. But you know, interestingly enough, the one show I did in New York was an off-Broadway world premiere, and it was um, this little theater on the Upper West Side. And when I met Chad on Match.com, I had learned my lesson. I'm not going to go to a full dinner. I'm not going to spend a ton of money on my first date with somebody from Match, because it could go very wrong. And in New York, a dinner is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I just said, "Hey, I'm doing this show, and there's a 24-hour French bistro right next to the theater. My show's an hour and a half. I get out at 8:45. You know, do you want to have a glass of wine next to the theater?" And Chad met me at the theater at like 8:45, and I mean at the bar next to the theater, and we sat on those bar stools until 2:30 a.m. and just never stopped talking. And when we left, it was like the first snow of the season, and he was going to head uptown on a train, and I was going to head downtown. And it's snowing, and we're standing in front of the subway, entry, and we kiss in the snow. And I was like, ugh. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a movie.
Oh, yeah.
Be written about your life, like.
Oh, it was just magical. It was like I heard the music, I just heard the violins or the swelling orchestra.
I feel that way about my husband too. I mean, it wasn't as romantic, but I saw him down the hallway and I knew he was the man I was going to marry. I just knew.
Yeah.
And then,
Well,
of course, he was in one of my classes and he asked for a highlighter pen. And I was like, I don't have a highlighter pen. If I had a highlighter pen, I'd give it to you. It was so awkward. And then I got sick. I got sick with like this pneumonia. Like I would get pneumonia quite a bit because I'm asthmatic, and it's so cold in Boone, North Carolina. So I got really sick. I was in the infirmary, and he sent a note to the infirmary saying, "When you get out of here, you want to go on a date? Check yes, no, or maybe."
that is so Scott. I love it. But what was so interesting, all those things I said about my childhood and how I grew up on a tiny road, and not being super sporty or into all those boy things that a lot of Southern boys are into, that was Chad. And so it was crazy. I had never dated anyone. I think I had purposely not dated people like myself. I had been attracted to a lot of guys from the Northeast, or not people who grew up in a tiny place. And it was so fascinating to sit there and talk for all those hours to someone who had almost the mirror image of my life experiences. We had just so much to talk about and so much in common that it was just effortless.
And I bet he didn't ask, so what can I see you in?
No, and he had just, and then like the next week he came to see me in that show that I was in, which was so interesting because I didn't get fully nude in that show, but I got down to my underwear in that show. And so he saw my body on stage in a play before he saw my body in his apartment. It was so strange. But no, he never asked, like, he didn't care. He was interested, he's seen me in everything I've ever done, but he didn't care what my credits were. He didn't care that I hadn't been on Broadway, or he just, it didn't matter to him.
Yeah, because he was your home, right?
Yeah.
You didn't know it at the time, but he was that home, which is so
Yeah.
blessing, like such a blessing if we can find that in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Find it with someone, and I feel incredibly blessed myself to have found it as well. So now, obviously, you have transitioned though
Mm-hmm.
into the life that you have now down here in Georgia. Was he cool with just like, oh, okay, I'm going back to
It was
Atlanta?
actually him that brought us back. I was growing quite tired of New York, and I was also sort of starting to feel like I exhausted, and like it was just a lot. And it's almost impossible to save money in New York. It's almost impossible to have a life, savings account, or thinking about a family. You've got to just do so above well to there. And so he actually he's in advertising, and his company sent him to Atlanta for an 8-week job in 2009 and put him in a corporate apartment. And I was in between shows and not on the road, and I came with him. And so I got to introduce him to the city I love, and a lot of people I knew, and he fell in love with it. I mean, rather instantly. And after years in New York not driving, there we are in a rental car, and we get to drive around, and trees and parks, and his boss could tell how happy he was. And his boss said, Chad, you could do what you do out of the Atlanta office if you are interested. So he came to me and said, what do you think? And it took me about 2 weeks to sort of come around to like, yeah, I'm ready to leave New York. I think I can do what I do and make art back at home and still and actually feel calm about it, and then we can have that family one day and dogs, and I don't have to spend every day under a blanket of anxiety and this ultra feeling of competition and one-upmanship in New York. And it was the best decision ever.
Yeah, and we should tell the listeners how amazing of a community we have here in Atlanta. Like, I'm an
Amazing.
ambassador of Atlanta so much. I'm from North
Oh,
Carolina originally, but
yeah.
I moved here right after school in 1998, and just a huge ambassador of the family that
Hmm.
Atlanta is, whether you know each other or not, everyone is always lifting each other up here. So
Yeah.
this is, listeners, you should know that this community, not only I feel, is one of the most talented groupings of artists, multifaceted, talented groupings of artists, but just the feeling that you are enough and that you are valid and that, yeah, everyone kind of just
It's
lifts each
true.
other up.
Yeah, I mean, I realized very quickly when I got back, and I was lucky that I had had those past connections. So I kind of folded right back into the scene, and that's a blessing. And I really realized as soon as I got back, I was like, oh, right. We applaud each other's successes here. Like we get excited if our friends do well. We are in it, and I've lived in New York. I've lived in the Bay Area. I lived in Chicago for a few months, and I've seen different communities of artists. And I do agree with you. Atlanta is very unique in the sense that we are warm and really supportive, and it's a great thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important for that to be really, really understood by actors about how much casting directors are rooting for you, no matter
Hmm.
where you're at. You don't just have to be here in Atlanta, but I have a very special place in my heart for the ones that are here in Atlanta because all of you have given these artists here so many opportunities to be in positions of their careers that they would have never been able to be in if they were in a bigger community in LA or in New York.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had, and part of that we've been really blessed about the film community building up
Hmm.
around us, like since, 98 to now, that film community build up around us has been a true blessing. But it really comes down to you guys being champions. And I always say this about big picture casting, that you're just like you're the champions for the actors. You really, really,
Yeah.
really root for them. And so when you see a lot of different, because you see so many actors and so many different auditions, can you
Hmm.
tell me and tell the listener, especially if they're younger and they might not have had the opportunity to audition for you, or anyone at this point in their careers, what it goes into, like, from beginning to end of when you see that thumbnail on Actors
Hmm.
Access start
Sure.
out to the decision of making that offer, or you call them or call their agent.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. Although I know it, I want to just.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. I mean, it goes even a few steps back before just seeing that thumbnail,
Yeah.
and it was a surprise to me because I had done 20 years of theater casting at all these equity houses in Atlanta, and Atlanta is unique, and unlike Chicago or New York, theater casting in Atlanta is literally whoever's doing the casting, if it's a casting person or associate AD or an AD, emailing Sloan Warren or calling you. There's no system, there's no breakdown services. Agents don't represent actors in Atlanta for theater. So it's very one-on-one and a lot of paperwork, emailed, like desk work. So I was thrilled to flip over and be able to do film and TV casting through these systems where it is so highly organized, and it is very efficient. And so that was but I learned a lot because I had been an actor here, and I had been with Houghton Talent for 10 years and booked films and commercials and industrials, and been very happy acting and being administrator. And I didn't quite know all of the steps, and so I was very surprised to be on the other side and doing it. um, and then it really made me realize and grateful for not only the things that I booked over the years, but when I see my friends, like if I see you book or when I see people I know and love get that recurring role, I'm like, wow, now I know how many steps it took for you to book that and make us proud and show that Atlantans can do it. Now I see how many people it's fascinating. So long story short, I'll use, I just cast a pilot for Adult Swim recently. So, you know, I put out with the team, we look at the script, we put out a casting break. We create a casting breakdown, and that includes also all the personnel and the contract and the network and the dates of shooting and anything like that. And the submission deadlines. So that goes out to breakdown services, which goes out to all of the agents that I choose. We usually just choose all Southeast agents. And so all the agents get this breakdown, and they go through and electronically choose who in their roster they feel fits all of the roles I have put out there. And they have 2 or 3 days to do that. And then all those thumbnails come in to me, and I am looking at all of them, knowing what we need, and I am then making a choice to ask a certain number of those people submitted from all over the Southeast to record an audition and submit a self-tape.
What is that number usually? Because it changes
a
from
lot.
production to production. But
yeah, I think it depends on, you know, it depends on the union status of the film. It depends on the pay rate, depends on the specificity of the role. And if it's incredibly specific or a very specific physical type or a special skill, or, you know, but for a very general, like for a Caucasian female 30s that isn't super reliant on anything ultra specific, I would say about it depends. And if it's union and it's gone out to all those agents, 200, 250, 300, maybe times 10 if there are 10 roles on that breakdown. Yeah, it was overwhelming, the number. I was just, and it changes, yeah, project to project. Could be less, it could be more, but it was shocking to me how many people live here or can call Atlanta home, and how many agencies there are now. Shocking. So fast forward, you know, I put out, I decide who we should request tapes from. Those eco casts go out, and actors get that, and they open it and they decide to tape and submit or decline if they're not available. And those come in over a few days, and I tend to watch those on a rolling basis as they come in. And I have a system of rating the tapes, and once everything is in, I determine sort of my top picks. And basically we tend to present to the client anywhere from like 10 to 15 or so options for every role that we have curated and feel that are the best shots.
Real quick question. Do you watch the whole submission?
Well, here's the thing. It depends. If it's a fast deadline, and if it is really, it's got to happen really quickly, and we've got tons of tapes, I certainly start. And I, if there are major red flags from the beginning, someone's very wrong in type, someone is far too old, far too young. Literally, there are agents in town who I think just blind click and will submit the wrong gender for roles. And I'm like, you have wasted everyone's time. There's one person that just seems to click everything. And I'm like, at some point I need to write them. And I'm like, this is specifically a female role. Yeah. So there are things that, you know, yeah. And so if something is really off, or it is just a really bad quality tape technically, or you can tell in the first 10 minutes they are very green and not ready for this scale of a project, I will move on.
10 minutes, but it's probably 10 seconds, right? You mentioned
10 seconds, sorry. Yeah. Yes, of course.
I was gonna say, it's not tape. 10 minutes.
10 seconds, yes. No tape is 10 minutes, I hope. Yes, so I will not, if someone's a really hard no, I will not always watch the whole thing. But on the smaller submissions, or I've done a lot of things with kids lately, and those aren't in the hundreds because they're, you know, specific types, I will tend to watch the whole thing no matter what. Yeah, and then, so then we, through the systems, we create a virtual presentation for the client, which is just a gallery of our top selects, and it's the actor's headshots, and then once they click, and any notes I have put in there that are mine, and then, you know, sort of beneath that headshot is the video. So
I love that. And so how many are, like you said, there's 10 usually?
like 10 to 15 for each role.
Okay.
But then, you know, Rita and Jen sort of taught me this too, is I'll have backups, and I'll have some sort of other people in my back pocket that were very close, or, you know, say I had Sloan and she's in my main presentation, and there was someone else very, very good and very close to you in type and very similar choices, but just not quite as alive or special, but good. And if for some reason and it has happened, they come back and they're like, did you have any other choices? Are there any other people we can see? And then I already have ready to go, like, okay, here's some that I also feel are strong. And then, you know, hopefully sometimes they'll cast off of tape, and sometimes we schedule callbacks and fast forward to, you know, the choice and who they love. And then I communicate that offer to the agent. And if there's any negotiating, and we do that. And then I create a deal memo, and I put everything, that all the terms of the deal on that memo, and the agent signs off on it, and production signs off on it, and we're off and running.
So just to go back just a step, between the presenting to them and that deal that goes out, actors are like, well, I haven't heard anything in a week, I guess I didn't get it. You know, like I hear that all the time from people.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't always say that, because I've been booked on something and I heard it like a month after. You know, so
I have too. Yeah, when I was acting, you just never know. And you also never know what can fall through, and what can, you know, someone may suddenly not shoot dates can shift, and the A choice is no longer available, but they still have your tape.
Yeah.
And I can show it to them again. And here's another good, I use this example a lot in terms of why I feel it is, if you say yes to auditioning and you were going to turn in a tape, that you always turn in 100%, no matter the project. If it is a tiny proof of concept short that nobody's going to see, but a studio or something, or it is Ava DuVernay or Steven Spielberg or whatever, that if you're going to say yes and turn in something, that you give it your all, because those tapes live with us and in the system, and they can follow you. And you know, I was casting this thing with kids months ago, and boys, and about a boy and his dog, a little short film, and we saw several young boys, and we had some finalists, and one kid got it, but the other kid, who was like number 2, was so great and so close. It was just about a look, and about you know, how the director, you know, jived with the kid he liked the most at the callback. But the other kid was fantastic. And then fast forward 2 months later, I'm working on something else, and we need an 8-year-old Hispanic boy. And before even putting anything out, I go to the tape from before, and I show that to the director, and I say, we saw this kid a few months ago. He's amazing. He booked it. He didn't even audition for it. So I write to his agent and say, I took the liberty of showing, you know, John's last tape to this new project. If you're interested, here's the script. The director wants him. He doesn't have to do anything else. He has seen an audition tape. He loves him. And so the kid gets something he didn't even know he was up for. So those things live, you know. That's why it's always great to show up and show out.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's so, I love that. I love that you keep the tapes. I always wondered, like, okay, which ones, you know, who keeps those tapes like that? Do they, you know, sometimes have them that they can file away? They're like, oh yeah, this person can do this accent or whatever it is that they do. And I like
Yeah, and another example in that same, the original audition about the boy with his dog, this is a good testament to why slates are very important. That we had asked those kids in that slate to not only traditionally slate, but at the end of the slate, talk about a family pet. And if you had a dog, bring the dog into the shot, interact with the dog, just tell us a little bit about your relationship to animals. And this one kid, the kid who ended up getting it, he didn't have pets, but he had stuffed animals and a stuffed dog. And he brought in his stuffed animal and had this amazing story an interaction with this stuffed animal, and he was just a kid, and he was just being himself. And so we're in the audition and the callback and the Zoom, and like a lot of kids who've been coached, he was saying the same word a certain way each time, kind of as if he'd highlighted it or he'd been coached. And and so the director was trying to get him out of that pattern and just get him to be organic and natural, and he was getting there. And he leaves the Zoom, and the director says, I love this kid. My fear is a little bit that he's so rehearsed, and I just want him to be natural. And I hope that I think I'm going to book him, but I hope when we get him on set, I can just get the kid and get away from this like acty kind of prescribed. Obviously his mom's like coached him, and I was like, watch his slate. Let's watch his slate, because on his slate, he's just playing with a stuffed animal and improvising, and he's just being himself. And the director was like, that's it. That's the kid I want. Like, I just need to get him to do that. And I'm like, there you go. Like, the slate that's who he really is. And he booked it.
I mean, a dream, right?
Yeah.
Have a direct offer, and a dream for you too, because and I talk about this in a lot of the podcasts, but that act of kindness, of forethought on your part, and how an amazing a human you are, that's a true testament to you, because you could have just done your job and, done it the way you've always have and not, have that, but you thought specifically for this one child because of the energy that he produced in that. And I love that that energy holds on to us, but it's permeable for other people too. And that act of kindness that we give in return it releases serotonin. It's a wonderful feel good hormone. I talk about this a lot, and a lot of times for anxiety and depression, we have to take serotonin boosted in a prescribed drug. But how wonderful it is that you can actually get that wonderful natural release of serotonin by doing an act of kindness. And then the person on the receiving end also has a release of serotonin. But then onlookers, like me hearing this story right now and us hearing it, we also get a boost of serotonin, because we're like, oh my God, this is amazing that this
good things do happen. Good things happen.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because I wore the actor hat for so long, and I know how I wanted to be treated, and I know how I wanted to be spoken to, and the kind of notes I wanted to get, and the kind of the cheerleading I was hoping was happening for me on the sidelines. So I think that help. I think that I think sometimes former actors make really good casting directors for that reason.
Absolutely, without a doubt, because you're thinking from the actor's mind, and you're able to see, okay, I can tell whether this person is being authentic or not. Even in the zaniest of comedies, which you get to cast, or zaniest things. Yeah. And then, so going from that space where you're actually, being in control of a lot of aspects of other people's lives. I mean, you're kind of, the gatekeeper, right? Like, so to speak, for a lot of these people's lives. And in your own personal life, at the same time, you were not in control. You had a moment where you tried to have control over a situation, but it just eluded you somehow. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how the balance of that, like, you're on one end, you're just doing so amazing things at work, but then
I think we're talking about my family building journey, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's life, right? It's amazing how life can sneak up on you in an instant, and the best laid plans and the best organized people and the best the people who try to work hard and be good and really contribute and can just be sidelined very quickly by life, and you can't control a lot of things. And that's hard for some people who are, I'm not a control freak, but I certainly have like to have my ducks in a row, and I'm very organized, and I'm that weird like type A artist who's empathetic and emotional and creative, but then also have that very organized brain and need things in charts, and I need to-do lists, and I need to check off things and feel I'm accomplished. And when something comes along that you're putting a lot of effort into, and a lot of energy, and a lot of money, and a lot of love, a lot of heart, and it doesn't go your way, it can be really hard for people like us. My husband and I were on a 3-year adoption journey, and we were working with an agent to do a private domestic adoption here in the US. And we had many close calls and lots of ups and downs, and then a really big what we thought was possibility and right turn. And in the middle of the pandemic, and last year around Mother's Day, we matched with a mom in Louisiana who picked us from our profile book. And we spent 4 months getting to know her, getting to speak to her on the phone and text with her, and supporting her, and talking about our future child. And we went out to meet her and her family in Louisiana, and met her children and played with them. And it was by all accounts just picture perfect and really beautiful journey. And we go out for the birth in August of 2020, and in the middle of 2 hurricanes, we are there in a hotel waiting on news, and we're not allowed in the hospital because the hospital's full. COVID, hurricanes, crazy. This beautiful little girl is born, and we go to the hospital, and the mother says goodbye, and we have hugs, and we share gifts, and it's a beautiful moment. And we, due to something called interstate child protection clause, you can't cross state lines with the child until a lot of things have happened. And then also biological mothers in each state, and it varies state to state, they have a different window of time that they can change their mind and before they sign away parental rights. So we had to stay in Louisiana, and we knew this was the case for a while. And we were here in a hotel, and 8 hours before this mother was set to officially terminate rights with the lawyer, she texted us that she had changed her mind, and she needed her baby girl back, and she needed her back that night, and she needed our address, and she was coming to get her. And we just, it was the worst, Sloan. I have never been more shocked and instantly unsure of what to do, and just devastated. And it all played out over a series of a few hours. And at 11 o'clock that night, we are driving what we thought was our daughter to a lawyer's office under an underpass in New Orleans, and handing her back to him, and riding back to the hotel with a car full of baby things, and still the smell of a baby, and no baby, no daughter, just gone like that. And it was the worst. I've been through a lot, and I've grieved in different ways, but I have never felt that kind of devastation.
I would think it would be akin to her being, God forbid, dead, right?
Yeah, or kidnapped. I mean, it was a robbery in a way. And instantly, and later the stages of grief played out in a more, in an elongated way, but it was a mix of anger, shock, just total, just deep sadness. And I've also, my husband and I have been through the loss of like grandparents together who were very elderly and not well, and it was very expected, and that wasn't hard. We had never been through anything like that together. And so it's an odd thing to see your spouse that devastated. And we were trying together to sort of get through it, because that night we had already introduced our child to her grandparents by video. There had been introductions. And so everyone around our circle is just waiting on the next piece of great news. So we had that night.
We are all on the journey.
I was very, yeah. And so we had to get on calls with family it was the last thing they were expecting, and tell family members that it was all over. And so I watched my husband grieve in a way I had never seen him, and that broke my heart times two. And it was an out-of-body experience. I mean, I felt like I was watching myself go through a movie in a way of the worst series of events, you know. And but we got through it, and we never
Have counseling? Like, did you go to counseling together? Because how does that make your relationship? Did it make it stronger, or did
it did make it stronger. It did. We didn't we talked to a lot of people. We talked to some people who'd been through the exact same thing, and I was actually surprised. I belong to this amazing gay fathers Facebook group, 10,000 gay fathers from around the world. It's international, and we give each other advice, and they had been part of the journey too, and so some of them had been through the exact same thing, and they helped. But you know, we, instead of heading straight home, Chad and I rented a beach house in Florida and just stayed at that house for a week and tried to just grieve together and talk about it, and just also eat and sit in the sand and read and just sort of not return home immediately. And we did get through it together, and we were stronger because of it. Because there was nobody to blame. There was nobody, didn't, you know, of course there was some anger at the mom, but it was always her right to do that. It just wasn't something we saw coming, and so it was a shock. And so you know, he didn't do anything wrong, I didn't do anything wrong, our agency didn't do anything wrong. It just happens. I think, in alluding to something that you said to lead us into this question, I have been very fortunate in my life, in career and love. It took me I mean, I didn't meet Chad till 32 or something, so it took me a while to find my true love. But I think when someone is pretty lucky and fortunate, when something like that happens, it hits you hard. You're just sort of like, but why me? Like, we've put so much into this, and I've been trying so hard to just craft a life, and I had a daughter for 5 days, and now I don't. Why is this happening to me?
and now
Why?
it's like a piece of you, right?
Yeah.
You know, like it's a piece, and it's also a piece taken away.
Mm-hmm.
That's never going to be there.
Yeah. And then it was odd, you know, the aftermath was very interesting, and sort of how the people in our life dealt with it, and our friends and family. And, you know, we're dealing with our own grief, and then we have lots of supporters who were very upset too, and
I'm in tears again.
devastated for us. And
Yeah.
the reach outs were both wonderful and then odd, and we heard things that either really comforted or made it worse, you know. And so it was strange to sort of navigate out of that. And then, you know, there we are rather quickly, like, reconnecting with our agency, saying like, all right, now we just have to restart, and what's the next step, and how do we move forward? And the
And
back
that
of your
means
head
a
is
whole nother agency fee, right? Because like that fee's gone no matter if you got the baby or
sort
not.
of, I mean, some of the things were generally adoption fees to the agency and marketing stuff, and so it wasn't a complete reboot, but we did lose a lot. And so a lot went to that adoption, the lawyers, her, the travel, that was just a wash, gone with the wind. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously you know about my beautiful son that we have now, but our adoption journey took way longer than we thought, and twice the budget that we thought. But we have an amazing son. We are so fortunate. I feel more gratitude than I've ever felt in my life. I feel like a different person, and it was, you know, it's all okay. It's all okay because my son is here, and I get to be the dad I always wanted to be. And you know, I was telling somebody this yesterday. I don't really act anymore. I might one day, you know, but I think that if I were to act again, I acted over the years, and like all of us would draw on my experiences and what I've been through, or substitute things if I'd never been through that. And, you know, you bring parts of yourself to every role, and you put other parts away or mute them temporarily. And I went through a lot growing up that I was able to bring to the work. I think if I were to act again, and I don't know if I was good or bad before, But I think I would be a richer actor having gone through all of this adoption journey. I felt things and saw myself do things and say things and power through things and survive things that I hadn't before it. So I think I bring it into casting too, and just my relationships. It's just, I think I'm just a deeper human now.
So this is so important, listener. Just having life experience and being able to not hinder yourself with that life experience, like always just auditioning and never go anywhere, never travel, or never, do the things you want to do because you're always a slave to just the industry, is going to actually be a hindrance, because what people really want to see is that full encompassed life. They want to
Yeah.
see every facet, not perfection, just flaws and you, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah. I mean, I went through a hard journey as well, trying to have my kids. We had a blessing, huge, massive blessing as well. But I can honestly say that it's definitely made me a better person being a parent and seeing life through their eyes and the child wonderment eyes, and a better actor, a better human being, everything, a better
Yeah.
friend. Because looking at the world through beginners' child wonderment eyes, and I mentioned this a few times in this podcast throughout the episodes, is one of the most beautiful things you can see in an actor, like that wonderment and
Yep.
that unbridled joy, right? That
It's
unbridled
true.
fun that you bring to any part. And let me tell you this, there's one thing I know to be true. You are an absolutely nuanced and insightful and authentic actor.
Thank you, Sloan. I appreciate that. I
So if
really
you
do.
ever do
Thank
want to do it again, obviously,
you.
or maybe
It was my first love, and I have to say, when I miss it the most is when I watch something that blows me away. Not even maybe a tape, but more, a movie or a TV show or a theater, and that's when I go, God, what they were able to do. I miss doing that, and it affecting people the way that affected me. That's when I miss it the most. Like I just went and watched the new West Side Story, which was something the original I watched over and over again growing up, and it was like the first community theater show I did, and I was just mesmerized. And I remember I watched it by myself in a theater down the street from my house. I love going to movies by myself, and I was like, oh, there's just so much creativity happening here, and I'm jealous. I just want to do something like that one day. Yeah, I mean, that's when I missed it.
Yeah. So isn't it amazing how God brings us, or true source, whatever you believe in, brings us exactly what we need when we need it?
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And
It's
like
true.
with Griffin, I mean, unbelievable. I know you've heard this time and time again, but he looks like you.
Well, yeah, he does, and I agree with you. And everybody says it, and it's just so strange. But it was the perfect match for us in so many ways. Not just because he's an amazing kid and he's so interactive and engaged, and he was from like week one, just
Next
looking and
level.
grabbing,
Yeah.
just looking and grabbing and everything. But the way it happened, Sloan, it could not, because of what happened before. We were, our agent was out there trying, and we were hoping to not have to go, we would have, but we were hoping that we weren't going to go through another elongated match where a mom picked us early in her pregnancy, and we had months to get to know her and to also worry that it was going to happen again, and that we were going to invest emotionally and financially and travel and get to know this person for months. And there was still no guarantee that the day of or the days after she wouldn't change her mind. So we were always sort of saying, gosh, an emergency placement would be the best thing for us. We probably aren't going to be that lucky. But we're sitting there here in our house at home working June 2nd, a Wednesday, I think. And we're both very busy. I'm watching tapes, and our agent calls us and she says, hi, can you guys jump on, she texted us. She goes, can you guys jump on a call? I need to chat with you today. And both Chad and I were like, we have really busy days. Like, can we talk tonight? And she's like, I really need to talk to you now. Can you drop what you're doing? So we get on a call with her and she says, a woman went into a hospital this morning outside of Philadelphia. She chose adoption in the hospital as her plan. She asked the nurse and the social worker of the hospital for help. They recommended she Google nearby adoption agencies. Our agency was the first one that came up. She called our number. Our agent was down at the hospital 10 minutes later with profile books and in the mother's labor bed, and she looks through 3 and she chose you 2. And she even called the nurses over to show them your book and how amazing your book was. And she is convinced that you are the 2 dads for her son, and she wants to meet you by phone. And I think you should get in the car and come to Pennsylvania. And that's what we did.
Wait, so in a span of 24 hours?
Less.
Okay, and how, so all the things in synchrodestiny, I believe there's synchrodestiny. I believe that like things line up in life for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are in that energy mind space of allowing it and our heart walls are not up, you know, we have released our heart walls, that things will just flow to us as meant to, in perfect synchronistic order, and you'll see little signs. So like you as a person who has gone through this like horrendous journey beforehand, and then everything just like pinpoint lining up, was it unbelievable? Mm-hmm. Were you on the other end of shock? Like we
were in shock.
Like I'm crying now thinking about it. I didn't
still
realize
a little bit of like, we're not out of the woods. I mean, it's still, she also has a window. But what was so great about this match, Sloan, is that
I never heard this story, so I'm crying.
We led with, I mean, we kind of adjusted our book to talk about the trauma a little, so that we weren't going to keep that secret from any future mother. We also did that on purpose, so that if there was any doubt with any mom who was looking at us that she's like, I'm on the fence, we probably weren't the couple for her. But our agent led with that story too. So she walked into the hospital with those books and she said, I have 3, but I want you to look at these guys first because they fit your parameters in so many ways. You fit theirs, and they've been through the following. And I want to tell you about what they've been through and why your situation and your child and what you want and what they want is a really great match. Because they're really hoping for an immediate placement. They're hoping for an open adoption. They're hoping for these things. And she was very moved by the story. And it was a factor in her choosing. And she said, I cannot imagine. She has 3 other boys, and Griffin, it's her 4th. And she just said, that they're still at it, and that they still seem to be joyful, and that they haven't given up. And I'll tell you, you'll love this. We had dinner with her when we got there, and she wanted to go to Applebee's. So we went and had a huge meal at Applebee's. We ordered everything off the menu. We sat there for 2 hours, and it was amazing. And 2 or 3 things. She said, what really convinced me when I looked at your profile book was the community of love that he'll be brought into. I saw all of these people in all of your photos that were smiling and were surrounding you, parents, grandparents, friends, and it just seemed like the happiest life that a kid could have. And I know that he's going to go and have all of these mentors and people to love him, and the love that was showing through what you wrote and then all of the photos. She goes, I just couldn't look at any of the other books. So that was huge for her. That was really huge for her. And it meant the world to us, because we value our friends and our family so much. And obviously, I don't think we would have made it through this journey without everybody. So when Griffin hears the story, and he will, of all of it, it will include like, you were so loved before you even got here, and you were so, and all that extra love is why your mom chose us. And here's here's the really like eerie thing and amazing thing, which we didn't know until we're sitting at that table with her. We were sort of doing the math about when she became pregnant and when she knew, and had she considered adoption or abortion or raising a fourth child. She figured out when she conceived, and it was the week we lost Cameron. It was the week we lost the baby girl. So he was coming into the world, into her womb. His life was forming during the darkest week of our life. And then, 9 months later, he's the light of he's just everything. We all cried at the table, and it's just an astonishing story. And there were all these other strange parallels of family names that we didn't know that were in common, and things like, you touched on this a minute ago, and you'll appreciate this. She had a couple of requests of us, and one was that we honor one of the names she had chosen for at least a middle name, and we did, Mitchell. But she reached across the table and she said, "I just want you to make me a promise." She said, and she had struggled with addiction over the years, and she'd been in a program, and she had some mental health issues in her life, and whether that was environment or genes or who knows, but it was she had a hard time, and she has a 13-year-old son with some learning concerns. And she said, whatever happens to Griffin, if Griffin later needs help, if Griffin is struggling, if Griffin has some sort of condition, what would you do about it? Like, how do you all feel about that stuff in your family? And Chad and I have had that throughout our family. We've both been to therapy. We have parents, and my brother is a recovering addict. And I said, he'll get every ounce of help he could possibly need. We believe in doing everything you can in our family to make someone well and happy, and he will get every ounce of support he could possibly get, medically, socially, at home. We will leave no stone unturned. And she started crying, and she's like, and that's just gonna make me feel so good over the years. Yeah.
And the fact, it got me affirmation bumps, which is what most people call chill bumps, because I call them affirmation bumps, because when you hear something that aligns with where your whole soul and heart meets it, it's an affirmation of it being true.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a vasodilation or a response in the body. Vasodilation would be for blood vessels, sorry, but you get a response in the body that confirms that. And when you said that he was being formed in the time of loss, was the answer to your prayer before you even knew it. How amazing for us to just think about all of us just being a thought.
Yeah.
All a thought before we're here in physical form. And we're all just expansions of love in some way or another. And so him being this massive expanse of love from a community, and you and Chad, and then her giving that over to you, just
there's like no
miracle, really.
It totally is. It's and that's he's going to have a narrative once he's able to understand it, and it'll evolve and be more specific over the years. But obviously, rather quickly, he's going to know he's two dads. He didn't come from us, and some friend may point it out, or some stranger. So we obviously are going to be prepared with, but we're going to be very clear with him about how it all happened, and how intentional it all was, and how much love was there in the planning and in the support, and that we'll do everything, because there are kids who are adoptive who struggle with that, who wonder why someone did not want to raise them and wanted to place them with somebody else. And there can be a lot of trauma in that. And so we're going to do everything we can to make sure Griffin knows that every single choice along the way was out of love, including every one of hers. And then that it just was all a huge effort over many years to give him the life we're going to try to give him.
It's going to be the best life.
I hope so. We're not perfect and we're going to make mistakes, but gosh, we just feel so fortunate to even get to be doing it, and I love it. I'm having so much fun.
I mean,
And
it changes your whole, how time
totally
moves, how time moves.
Oh
Time
God,
moves
yeah.
so quickly. Like
Yeah.
when you showed the picture of him 6 months, I'm like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
Like that's
I
not
told somebody
possible.
yesterday, I used to live in my head a lot. I am fairly self-critical, not that it debilitates me, but I spent a lot of, my mom's a worrier, and so I kind of inherited a worry gene, and I would overthink things or play out conversations in my head. I would live in my head a lot. I don't have time for it anymore. I quickly realized that, like, oh, I'm like, I matter like second or third now. Like, I don't like, I didn't shower for 2 days. Okay. Like, oh, I haven't, I don't overthink things as much anymore. And I'm less self-involved, or like, it's all like, I wake up thinking about him and I go to bed thinking about him. I mean, I have moments where obviously I'm watching a tape or I'm watching a movie or I'm doing work or I'm not, he's not the front of my mind, but I feel less selfish and less, um, I just, he's my purpose now. And it's sort of like, I love it. I think it's the thing I needed to just finally like feel like an adult and finally like stop stressing about the small stuff, because he's far more important than the tiniest thing that I could replay a conversation. Like, did I really say that? And oh my God, I wonder what they thought if I said that, or I probably should have said that differently. I don't do that anymore.
Well, he's like, I always think of kids as being the heartbeats of ourselves outside of our bodies,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just a unbelievable feeling to be able to be in that space of gratitude, because I know my journey was nowhere near as heart-wrenching as yours, but we had a difficult journey, and
Hmm.
yeah, just having that gratitude of being in the space of, wow, I get to be chosen as your mentor and your guide is so
Yeah.
awesome. I love it. I love it.
It's the best. I'm like going around recommending it to everybody, knowing that it's not for everybody, but I'm always like, you should have a kid.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
No.
Listener, we're not letting you know that you have to have a kid to have validation. You
No,
will
it's
be
true. It's true. It's true.
validated in just your own expansion of love. And it could be just a matter of loving on your furry loved ones as well, because you were amazing furry loved parents
Yeah,
beforehand.
exactly.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, what would you tell your 20-year-old self looking back now?
Oh gosh, I would say go ahead and get it out and say what you feel, and you know that what matters the most is, um, being really honest with yourself and true to yourself, and finding other people around you that can love you for who you are, friends. Hopefully, not that everybody has to pair up either, but we are as a species drawn to others, and we're not solitary human people. That someone is out there, or some people or a group who are going to love you just the way you are. And just, I think I spent a good, maybe because I was acting too, or a performer, I think I spent a number of years sort of crafting a persona that I thought was sort of what I should be, and it felt, so it was only when I came out, and then when I started to really thrive in my career, and then obviously meet Chad, where I started to like say something out loud and it sounded like my voice. I get to sort of speak, and I was like, oh, that's you. I also, if you met my family, although my Southern accents come back quite a bit since I moved home, but if you had heard me at like 12, I mean, I was super country, very country, but I also knew that I wanted to leave there and do other things. So I was always singing or watching TV and like speaking back to like newscasters. Like I was trying to sort of, so I was like purposefully becoming someone else. And then over the years, that sort of crafted persona shifted into like who kind of I really am. And I think now finally at 45, I'm like, when I say something out loud or look in the mirror, I'm like, oh, that's me. Like I'm really now just me. I'm not some performance or some what I think other people should be. So I wish I could tell my 20-year-old, like I wish I could have started that at 20, but you have to learn things and go through things to figure out who you really are. You know, and I wouldn't, I've been through some deep valleys and some super high peaks, but I now really wouldn't trade any of it if it meant that I got to be like sitting right here talking to you with my husband on the other side of the door working, my kid down the street at daycare, you know, about to watch some tapes of auditions, Christmas ahead of us and my first Christmas with a child. I wouldn't trade any.
And to that point, what would you tell actors when they're, you know, trying to begin crafting what they're given as a small piece of paper with very
Yeah.
little on it? What would
Yeah.
you say to them as being the most authentic advice you could give them?
Yeah. So a few things. I get asked this a lot and I talk about it in class, but a few things. I would certainly say do everything you can to bring yourself to the room or to that tape and not try to be somebody else or some other acting style or what you think is currently sort of, you know, what works for someone of your type. Nobody can bring what Sloan can bring in the room because of everything Sloan's been through. I mean, I know it sounds a little cliche, but truly be yourself. And then I would say some sort of apart from the technical basics, like I think we are now at a point post coming out of pandemic where there is the expectation that sound and light and framing be great, and it should be. And you got to invest if you don't already, or put a savings account aside to go tape somewhere. It has become essential almost. Not that someone
here for a
it
long
has,
time,
but there was a little forgiveness during the pandemic because everyone was so crazy. It was like, okay, if the acting's good, I'm gonna let, you know, forgive some of this stuff. But I think we're now reaching back to a point of like, it's gotta be pretty great. Not that occasionally some amazing actor who doesn't have the best setup couldn't rise to the top, but to be competitive, you really want all that technical stuff to be in line. But other than that, having watched hundreds of tapes at this point, I think what stands out for me are people who, and I know this is very hard to do in a one-liner or an under five or something where you've got to deliver a pizza or something. Obviously that's very hard, but in a scene, I am always very interested and very attracted to people who can tell a story, who can have a beginning and a middle and an end, who can take us somewhere in that scene. I see so many flat scenes where someone starts, they don't go anywhere. There's no discovery, no beat, no change. They're here and they're here and they end here. And there's no sense of dynamics or any bit of range or any kind of storytelling. So I'm always looking for someone who, I mean, right, stories have an arc, someone who can craft some sort of movement in the 3 pages that they got. I'm also, you know, I was just teaching a class of teens and tweens from age 9 to 16, 12-week class every Saturday for 2 hours. It's fascinating. And some of them had training, some of them had agents, some of them didn't. And I said, you know, if you can do nothing else with a scene and you've got a little bit of time or your life is crazy and you got to tape this, ask yourself the 3 big W's. What do I want? What's my objective? What is in my way? What's my obstacle? And what am I doing to get around that obstacle to achieve my objective, my action? There's so many people, I think, who don't have any training or who just sort of who rest on their personality or their look to just say the lines, and they don't know what they want in the scene, and they don't know what's in their way, and they're not doing anything specific to get it. It's just very general. I see a lot of people playing a feeling. They're like playing sad, or they're playing a genre. They're playing, you know, a thriller or Stranger Things or something. They're just playing a tone. And so I am always aiming and hoping people can be specific. And, you know, I don't have to know what your objective you chose or I don't have to know that your action was to diminish or to squash or to flirt, but I'll see something and I'll see that it's specific and it won't be flat. So I'm really curious. I'm really interested when people dig that deep, and it doesn't have to be broadcast at a billboard size, but it's for you. And so that to me means something specific is going on. And also Sloan, I'm like shocked sometimes how many people just skip right over beats. And the beat can be many things to different people, but for me, it's a change in the scene. It's a shift in the air, or it's somebody new enters, or it can be a revelation. It can be a lot of things, and sometimes it's written in beat, and it could mean pause or not pause. But I'm shocked at the number of people who will fly through a moment and it will be exactly the same as it was before the moment. And some major information came at them. Some major thing happened and it's just all the same. So when and if something happens in a scene, it's new, it has to register, and it might be a millisecond, but we've got to see it land somehow and how you move on from it. And I was really surprised often how many people just race right through and race over these big moments. So I would say go through every scene that you get and search for the beat shift, search for, and are there any opportunities in a scene for a discovery where somebody says something you didn't know, or you realize something in the middle of a thought that you didn't know before? And it has to, like, it can't be exactly what it was right before, right? It has to be different. I'm also
right. Like, we're always thinking about
totally
things.
Look what happens when I told you something you weren't expecting to see. It registered. And when you've told me something, I'm like, it's that active listening. It's that.
That's important. The listening.
Totally. I do see so many people just go away when they're not speaking,
because
doing nothing.
Their next line, probably.
Totally. The other thing too, I one of my side sort of jobs is I work for Catapult Acting Studio, and I coach and tape, and so I'm coaching people and taping them, and I'm always needing to know what I have at the beginning to trim and what at the end, so I can create a good tape for them. And I'm always encouraging that life before, right? And what's happened. So I'll say camera rolling, and then I'll ask them to do whatever they're going to do before anyone speaks, and then I'll ask them to keep the life rolling at the end of the clip, so I have some air on the end, so that they're not just saying a line and I'm going to cut, but they're experiencing something going forward. So ask yourself, actors, like what is happening right before I speak, or this scene comes up, or someone speaks? What is going on? What am I doing physically, if anything? And then how am I ending this? Whenever the last thing is said, how do I feel about it? Or what am I doing? And then we'll cut, right? Because that's going to happen on set. They're just going to keep keep rolling until
but even in life, like, sometimes we second guess what we've just said to someone. So even having that in there,
right.
I shouldn't have said that. That just maybe if it's not even the right choice, it's something that's like, yeah.
Right, and that's the thing too. I want everybody to get out of the idea of like right choice or wrong choice or good or bad. Again, like you said it earlier.
Yeah, we don't use
this
good
is
or
not,
bad. We don't use.
No, I use
when I teach also. We don't.
When I coach, I use and I got this from my volunteering with the Georgia High School Musical Theater Awards, the Schuler Awards. I've been doing that for many years. And when we talk to high schoolers and give them forms and evaluation forms and give them our critiques, we use the words successes and opportunities. Like, I find that your successes in this tape were this, and here are some opportunities to do it again. But where are we going? The other thing too is that I am often surprised by, like, I think you, among all those other things we said, you've got to have an opinion about what you're saying, or have an opinion about who's on the receiving end of it. You feel some sort of way I feel some sort of way talking to you, and I feel very warm, and I feel very safe, and I feel very happy here, but I see a lot of tapes where there doesn't seem to be a care or an opinion or a relationship to the reader or the receiver. It just seems to be very flat. and it's just not dynamic. We have to care. We have to want something in a scene, right? And the other thing too is I see all too often in like really dramatic scenes or high stakes scenes, people playing the ending very early on, and they're already playing where they got to go. And so when I'm coaching people, I'm looking at those first few lines, and particularly like fight scenes or breakup scenes. It's like often we go into those situations hoping for the best. Like we want the other person to stay with us, or we don't want to fight. So I'm always encouraging people to choose some things at the beginning that are you fighting for like a good outcome, like the best possible outcome, so that you don't play the ending of really bad news and you give yourself somewhere to go. I see some people sort of just jump right to the biggest part of a scene or the finale, and it's like you got to get there somehow. Yeah. And I'm also like, in life, like you and I have, in the middle of really serious things and sad things, we've laughed here and there, or I'm really interested when someone throws in something lifelike like that, where you can make fun of yourself in a moment, or you have an opposite of, like, I think it's really lovely in a dramatic scene, or when someone smiles unexpectedly and someone shows you a different color. Yeah, I think those would be my big ones. And maybe some more, but those are I think it's just all about, I encourage my young actors now, those 9-year-olds, I was like, get a little acting journal. And every time you get a scene or an audition, answer those following questions. And then you'll be leaps ahead of a lot of people who are just going to just lean into their type and their look and trust that if they say it out loud, it's going to come out right. And it might, you might really luck up and just be able to be yourself and do no work and book something, but it's not going to happen over and over again. You're going to have to actually act at some point. You're going to actually have to do the work.
I love the idea of a journal, because then the young actor, or even any actor, can just see where they've come from and
Mm-hmm.
where they are years later, and see, oh yeah, this is how people are seeing me now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we change throughout our seasons of our life,
Mm-hmm.
of how people see us, and to know
Yeah.
ourselves so intrinsically. And sometimes it takes therapy or whatever it is, talking to
Mm-hmm.
someone, knowing yourself. I always believe therapy is a good way, perhaps, for an actor to know a bit more about themselves. Or
Yeah.
I like
I
to.
also told those kids, I was like, one of the things in these callbacks with kids, listen, I can't even imagine me auditioning at 9. I'm like blown away, like that a 9-year-old can do this thing that we do. But maybe they can because they don't overthink it like we think it. But I'll be in these auditions with directors, and they'll be talking to these kids, and the kids have been coached by their parents, and sometimes they don't even know what they're doing. They don't know the story. And so I encouraged all of those kids. I'm like, first thing first, get the scene, and in one sentence write out the plot. And I would ask them, what does the word plot mean? So just tell me the story of what's happening in 1 or 2 sentences. A girl walks down a hall at school and stops at a locker, and on the other side of the locker is this boy she has a crush on, and she's been waiting for him to talk to her for years, and he finally does, and she goes mute. Whatever. Because a lot of the kids don't even know, when asked by these directors, like, tell me what's happening in this scene. I'm sad. Well, I don't, I'm upset. And so I'm trying to encourage them to, like, if you know the story, then then you can help tell the story. But if you don't really, if you're just saying lines, that's, so I encourage people to really know exactly what kind of story they're trying to tell, and how they function in it, and how the other person on the receiving end, because it is about doing something to that person, right? Acting is action.
Yeah, and it's so important to just be able to delve in and Sherlock Holmes the text. too, because
Totally.
it gives you so much that you don't even realize it gives you. Like if you're lucky enough to get page numbers, you know where you
Hmm.
are. If you look up, oh, it's a 60-minute episode or a 30-minute episode, you know if you're at, page 35 or, of a
Hmm.
60-minute episode, that you're kind of like near getting to a climactic moment, and you can see
Yeah.
kind of where you lie within that story frame of, just looking whether it's day or night, and how the air would feel on your skin if you were at night, or if it was, the time of year it would be. So,
Yeah.
you're feeling heat. So it's all about energy and how palpable it is across the screen. And we see it in wonderful performances. These performances you've
Hmm.
watched, and you can feel the heat off of them. You can feel that what they're feeling.
Yeah. And you said something earlier. I think that sometimes people are afraid to make some of those choices or take a risk here or there or show a little opposite or laugh or take a big beat because they're afraid like, oh, it won't happen like that on set. And like, that's not what they're looking for. And like, I don't want to do too much because um it'll read as big or like they're not going to want that on set. And again, like an audition is not is not the film being shown in a theater. It's an audition for theater is not opening night. It's an audition. And, granted, there are some, and I book them and you book them. There's some things where we say a couple things and they really want you to show up and do what you did on your self tape. They're not going to give you much direction. You made some cool choices or you're the right type. They just want you to come in and do that. You don't really get much direction. You get a rehearsal and maybe you get a note, maybe not. But there are other things, the longer scenes, the scenes with an actual arc or the 2 or 3 page things where you can have you can take a little liberty because everybody watching it knows this is just a taste of what you can do. This is just showing us what you're capable of. You're not delivering the final edit. You're going to have direction on set and great lights and great costumes and help. And this is just, can this person go there and are they right? Yeah, I mean, I think we have to get out of our head the idea of it being perfect, because
It doesn't
not.
exist. No. Because life isn't perfect. Like when we're talking here, you think about something and then you stop and you
Yeah,
maybe flub a line or, flub a word. Not that we want anyone to flub lines or anything, but sometimes those happy mistakes make it more real. And I
yeah,
can tell you that some of the most fun things I've booked was because I put, like you said, the pre-life in, kept going with the life afterwards, maybe a little bit of an improv, button if on the second take, because you have the ability to
hmm,
take a little few more liberties on that second take,
yeah,
but just to be, have fun with it, just to have fun. And if I'm right, I'm right. And if it's mine, it's mine. If it's not, it's not.
yeah.
At
More
least,
times than not, I have heard lately, um, when we're looking at options and directors and we've seen callbacks and we've got, a couple people neck and neck and for a role and someone is, and they've both been called back and given direction. And he or she has worked with them on the Zoom, and someone is giving us several choices, is taking some risk. And when the director says something like, "All right, let's just try something different. I mean, let's just see what happens if she is much more anxious about what's going on and high, that the stakes are much higher and it's just let's pick up the pace and someone's willing to go there and play and someone else kind of sticks to their guns and kind of does what they did and inches their way toward the note. Almost always I hear when everyone's gone and it's just us, the director say, they're great, they're both great. I would rather have someone on set that I can pull back that has shown me some options that I can say, okay, Sloan, just a little less and that thing you did before, let's try that, than someone who gave me very limited options, but it's the right look and type and tone. And I have to hand feed them the ideas. I don't have time for that. I'd rather have someone I can sculpt away from. I hear that more often than she took too many risks and like I don't know if she went there, like she just did too many things.
yeah, because it's a
Yeah,
puzzle piece. You're just trying to solve their problem, and the less that they have to do, the more you can
totally.
collaborate,
There's so
the
many things
easier
they have
job it
in their head.
is. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's such
that's
great.
why like when you get the opportunity, you got to show up and really and do everything you can not to distract or slow anything down, or you just got to be as professional as you can for the whole project, but for yourself and your career, because there's so many things going on, and they've hired you to come in and do a great job and not like cause extra work, and that's what when we're pushing, I know it's a cliche, but like we really are on the side of the actor, particularly me, and I think a lot of great casting directors, and particularly in this market, because we want to have, when I'm trying to figure out those like 15 options per role to put in the slideshow, like we want to have extremely awesome choices in every slot, so that they are like overwhelmed with the idea of I could do it 5 times, instead of like, I don't know, Clifton, we got to start over, or like, I don't know, who are your other options? We want everybody whose tape we start to be an A, so that we're like, oh my God, like I have 40 A's, because it means that they hired a good casting office. It means that when we said there are great, talented people in Atlanta, trust us, we weren't lying. Recently, I was working on something, and it was an LA casting and person attached, and we were doing location casting, and we were set to cast like six roles, and LA was going to cast 2 with somewhat, names and offers, and but we still read people for the 2 what were meant to be LA roles, and we had a person tape for one of those 2 roles who was phenomenal and worked so hard on it and was so mesmerizing that when we all watched that callback and she went away, every person, including that LA person, it was undeniable, and everyone said that was brilliant, that it does not get better, that is your person. And that LA person had to admit, we got to go with her. Like, so we got an Atlanta role, we ended up getting 7, and instead of, and it was because we told them we should see her. She worked really hard, she was super flexible and kind and professional on that Zoom callback, and it was a beautiful thing to watch everybody's face on that Zoom go like, holy crap, we're going to be foolish if we don't cast her.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Wow. So now, knowing what you know, with everything you've been through in life and all the work and, joys and ups and downs, what would you tell yourself 20 years in the future?
Oh gosh, 20 in the future me, I would tell myself,
What you would say, what would you say to him?
to like 65-year-old me, I hope that you took the time to say thank you and that you were grateful over all those years that you were working in your industry, and that you didn't go do something else, that since you fell in love with something really early on, you pursued it and you stuck with it, and you worked really hard, and you gave credit where credit was due, and you said thank you a lot, that I'm not going to change the world by being in this industry or casting, but I hope when I'm retiring or when I'm thinking about my next chapter, that I can look back and say, I helped tell some great stories. I helped some people have some great careers. I helped some teams create some great projects, and I got to do it in an industry that it changed my life from an early age, and I all that theater work over the years, and I have to say that to me of some of the things I got to work on, and I hope to get to work on projects for TV and film that are going to change hearts and minds. That I can later in my 60s go, you did good work, and you stayed true to yourself, and you were thankful for it, and yeah, that's what I would like. I would like Griffin, because he's going to be going off to college when we're retiring, because we waited late. I would like for him to to understand what I did, and why, and that it had meaning.
Yeah, that's what we want, is just to have meaning in this world, and to
Yeah,
make a difference in other people's lives, and you have. I mean,
thank you.
you're constantly making a difference in people's lives. So,
I know how it changed me, and I have to say, like, I used to love theater so much, and I think I was a theater snob. And I used to say over the years, like, oh, the best life-changing art happens on a stage and in theater. But I watched, like so many of us, I watched so many things during the pandemic on my television screen. And obviously, we all know that like some of the best work is happening now on TV, and there's so much great writing and so much content. Not all great, but I saw some things over the last 2 or 3 years that riveted me and that I thought about for days, and that shifted something in me, or I saw it right at the time I needed to see it. And so I'm now more of an all sort of, I love now, I still love theater and what it can do, but I also now know that, like, you know, this art form that I'm in now can do it too. And great acting and great directing and great design work and just great editing can just transport you. And I'm hoping there's some young people out there that are watching these things that they have access to now and learning something about themselves or life, and realizing they're not alone, and that they have worth, and that, yeah, it's a great time to be making art and telling stories.
yeah, yeah, it really, really is. And they used to say it was like big screen versus small screen, but now
I
it's
know.
like the Wild
No.
West. Now it's
Well,
like,
look, I mean, look at, over the last few years, all of our major stars who never did TV, everybody wants to do TV now because the writing there's so many great things. And it's just fascinating to watch. Yeah.
thank you for holding this space with me, Clifton.
You're welcome. I'm glad my voice held up. I was a little worried. I was like, oh, it's gonna be gone.
This is amazing. I just can't wait to see what you guys create next. Like you're gonna change. I mean, you're changing people's lives. You already have. I mean, big picture particularly has changed my life. I can say that I was gifted an opportunity through Big Picture that definitely changed the course of me as a storyteller. Being able to be cast opposite Al Pacino and Carl Urban and Brittany Snow was just a delight. And yeah, so you guys, you are changing lives.
Yeah, I'm so glad I landed there, and it was, it's a special place to me too. One of my favorites. They cast me in The Good Lie with Reese Witherspoon, and I got to spend a day on set with her, and it was the two of us in a scene and a bunch of extras. So I was in a holding area with her, and oddly, it was the day of the Boston Marathon bombing all those years ago. So there was this chaos in the world going on, and here we are trying to make a movie, and I'm in a holding area with a mega star. But it was a wonderful day for many reasons. But she had just gone on her honeymoon to Italy, and I was about to go on my honeymoon to Italy. So she shared all these tips and restaurants with me and this and that. And it was just a lovely, we acted, and then we went over and we were humans for a while. And it just reminded me that, like, that's what it's about, right? It's about like connection and respect and being professional when it's time to be, but then also being able to be yourself and just connect to somebody else. Yeah. And the Big Picture gave me that. And then when I thought, what am I going to do now that I'm leaving theater and a pandemic has happened, and am I now finally going to have to get out of the industry? Like, am I finally, have I reached the point where I'm going to not work in the industry anymore? And they called, and we got to meet and realize, and I ended up getting to do this thing. And it's just it's one of those small miracles. And in the same year I have a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I that's why I named this podcast. Actually, Scott named the podcast because I feel like in life we feel as actors pivoting is, something like, oh, we can't pivot, but
Mm-hmm.
yes, we're humans. We can pivot and still have a
Totally.
resplendent existence and be full of life and fun. And I love that. I love that you did not get detoured. You were undetoured because of that one phone call.
Yeah, and it's part luck, but part also ambition, and part preceding reputation and the hard work and the trust and the yeah.
Because that's what luck is. It's where the opportunity meets the
Mm-hmm,
preparedness.
mm-hmm,
When
absolutely.
it's only your life's work.
Yeah, it's true, and I wouldn't change a thing. I'm very blessed today, heading into the holidays, and healthy, and have people around me in this community like you. I'm just very grateful.
Thank you so much, Clifton. This has been amazing. And just
You're welcome.
so appreciate it
Give
today.
those boys a hug.
Yeah.
Give that fantastic hubby a hug, who I got to act with as well in Atlanta theater. One of my favorite experiences. Oh yeah, we should have gone into that chapter about how Scott was totally a lifeline, a buoy, a life preserver for me during a dark time of my life, when I was in this amazing show doing a great role with great reviews and great audiences, and then going through a horrible breakup and depressed, and walking into the theater each night in tears thinking I can't do this, and Scott holding my hand and literally holding me saying, you can, you're great, and you've worked really hard, and you rehearsed this thing, and you could do this on autopilot, and I'm going to go out there with you, and you're going to be great. And he did that with me almost nightly for weeks, where I was like, Scott, I can't do it. And he was like, yes, you can.
I didn't know this.
Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, we would. Yeah, Scott, there were 3 boys in the show and 2 girls. And so Scott and I and this other guy were in a dressing room. And I would leave my work job at the Alliance, go get a smoothie or something because I couldn't eat. I was so depressed and anxious. And I'd go to the Actors Express to get ready for the show. And I'd start to panic as soon as I got there that everybody's going to see I'm a fraud. Everybody's going to know I'm depressed. I'm going to forget my lines. I'm going to ruin the show. And I would start to get myself worked up. And Scott knew it. And we would go over into the prop room around the hall, like and he would sit on the floor with me. And Scott would do this. He would just talk to me and tell me, you're going to be okay. And you're going to, because you prepped so hard and you know this show, and I guarantee you once it starts, and you love it. I guarantee you when it starts, you're going to be great. And he was right. Yeah, he's an amazing person. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah. He really is an amazing person and director and supportive husband and everything.
Yeah.
That's truly amazing. I had no idea of this story at all.
Yeah, and I'll
And
never
that's
forget
how
it.
amazing it is because he kept that private for you.
Well, but
Yeah.
all the things he were saying, I'd like to be able to say that to somebody else one day. All the things he said were true. Like, you're valuable. You put in all the hard work. You know this thing. This is what you love to do. I know it's hard and you're terrified, but you're not a fraud, and you're good at what you do, and you worked really hard. We've all got your back. You know this show, because we were deep into the run at that point. And he just told me and he said, I love you. And he said, I believe you can do it. And that's what people need sometimes. It's just somebody else to say, you got this. Yeah.
Well, I know that you're saying that to so many others now, and you're passing that love along.
Hmm.
And I'm just so grateful to have you in my life, Clifton.
Thank you, Sloan.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad ours is intersected in so many ways. Yes. So till we meet again.
Yes, absolutely. And you guys will, if you ever get the opportunity to audition for Clifton, you will be in for a treat for how wonderfully supportive he is. And I just thank you so much, Clifton.
Thank you, friend. Have a good week. What is it? The days of the week are blurry. Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And happy holidays to you and yours.
And happy holidays to you too.
Thanks for tuning in to Undetoured, Navigating the Artist Journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and subscribe and leave a 5-star review. And please check out our other episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And in return, my gift to you is a short, invigorating meditation to get your day started. You can find its link, along with other links to Undetoured, in this episode's description. Undetoured, Navigating the Artist Journey was produced by Cabot Basden of Say What Sound Studio and hosted by Sloan Warren.